Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for DIY Homeowner Ladder Safety, the final webinar in our 2025 National Ladder Safety Month webinar series. My name is Joseph Grobick of the American Ladder Institute. Our sponsor for this webinar is Little Giant Ladder Systems, and with us today is Kenyan, Allan, and Dave Francis to lead today's presentation. But before we begin, some brief background information. The American Ladder Institute is a not-for-profit trade association dedicated to promoting the safe use of ladders. Its members are affiliated with the ladder and ladder component manufacturing industry, and ALI is the American National Standards Institute approved developer of ladder safety standards. National Ladder Safety Month, observed in March and spearheaded by the American Ladder Institute, is the only program dedicated exclusively to promoting ladder safety at home and work. This year is the 9th anniversary of National Ladder Safety Month, and we are excited to bring you a new series of webinars covering safe ladder use. We are grateful to Little Giant Ladder Systems partnership on this webinar. Through its innovative climbing solutions, Little Giant focuses on raising awareness and prioritizing ladder safety. A couple logistical announcements. All attendees will remain muted for the program. At the end of the presentation, attendees can ask questions by typing them into the questions feature. This webinar is being recorded, and we will share the recording with all attendees later this week. This recording will also be hosted online at laddersafetymonth.com, where you can find additional safety information. With that, I will pass it over to Little Giant.
Fantastic. Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your introductions. Appreciate the American Ladder Institute for their leadership in March being National Ladder Safety Month. We appreciate our relationship with the ALI and really the ladder industry that continues to improve designs, improve standards, improve really the culture of safety, not only for the professionals, but today we're going to be talking about home use and how ladders affect a lot of homeowners. We'll make some introductions on our side, and then I'll introduce you to Dave Francis. My name is Kenyan. I started with Little Giant in 1995, so I've been here for a few years. And if you don't know about Little Giant, we are an American brand here in Utah. We're about 45 minutes south of Salt Lake City. And if you ever get a chance to come out to Utah, visit our national parks and ski our mountains, beautiful part of the country. Inside our building here in Utah, again, been in business since 1972, but we also built studios inside our building so that we can meet our distributors where they are. We can find common ground with those that need to see our products in a different way. 3 interactive studios, and today we're using them to hopefully bring a little bit more education to you as you use ladders around your own home. Behind the scenes, we also have Mr. Paxton Wing, an important part of our team, and you can see that he has a lot of this technology in his hands. And so even though this looks like an edited video, that's just because Paxton's really good at what he does. So that's my introduction of who I am. You're going to see and view what we're doing here. But let me also introduce Dave Francis. Dave Francis started with Little Giant in 1982, and he's kind enough to join us from his home office in South Carolina. Mr. Dave.
Kenyan, Paxton, Joe, thank you guys for supporting Ladder Safety Month. Today's presentation's really key because we're talking to the homeowner, do-it-yourself person, and statistically, and Paxton hopefully can follow me on these, we do ladder safety presentations because if it's easy to do, it's easy not to do. And we get pictures all of the time of people doing crazy stuff. Really, how many guys does it take to change a light bulb? And we know that they've probably got the right ladder on the truck, but they just wanted to save a few minutes to kind of get it done quickly. And you think of all the risks involved in this picture, including, and probably most costly is if they hit that poor lady coming up the stairs when they fall. This is going to really take a very expensive turn for the worse. But we do see that homeowners have a higher percentage of accidents on the weekends than the tradesmen do on the weekday. So Monday through Friday, we might be really safe because we have a safety officer and trainings and equipment. But when we get home on the weekend, we're trying to get those chores done during halftime, maybe after the game, and there's been some drinking involved. We see the number of accidents go up really dramatically. And so a lot of things that I think Kenyan's going to show us today are really more focused on what we can do around the house and trying to keep those numbers on the weekend down. If you get hurt on the weekend, you're still not there on Monday to help the people you work with and your employer. So these are all tied together. And Kenyan, why don't you go through some of the OSHA numbers as far as citations and how all of this fits in, and then what we can do at home to really keep everybody safe and on the job.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave. So it is surprising when we find out how much ladders affect the reason that OSHA writes violations. And I know that that doesn't always affect us at home, but it might surprise you, and at least top of mind of out of the top 10 reasons that OSHA writes violations, 4 of those top 10 reasons, or the categories of those reasons, are related to working at heights. And I understand that ladders used to be a little bit lower down on the list, and now number 3. More important than the violations, though, are the people that are affected. Look at this. This is the fatality rate according to OSHA. And if we look at number 1, and then we compare it to something dangerous, and I'm using finger quotes as in dangerous, let's take number 3. Right? Electricity. I think we know when to take precautions, especially at home. You know when to call in a professional. You know when to call in somebody that's been trained. Where, again, working at heights, we don't always think of it as diligently as we think of something that's perceived to be dangerous. I mean, we've been climbing ladders since we were about 3 years old. Think of us at the playground, or if you had bunk beds with a sibling. You've been climbing on things since the time you could walk. And so when we often grab a ladder, even at home, we often don't give them the same respect as if we would if we were changing a receptacle in the wall or doing some electricity. So again, call professionals when that needs to happen. But today in America, when we think of the statistics, when we roll homeowners into these statistics, there are 2,000 people today that will have some incident or accident because of a ladder. And then there will be 100 people, give or take, that will have a permanent or temporary disability in some form, and there will be a fatality today because of a ladder. So this does affect us professionally, of course, those that use ladders to put food on their table Monday through Friday. But like Dave said, we often don't always think of ladders as the fall protection or the fall prevention that they really are. When we're at home, we're away from the eyeballs of our coworkers or even a supervisor that might remind us to be safe. We often take risks when we're in our own garage or in our own backyard. So this does affect a lot of people, but especially us at home. So when we teach ladder safety, we're going to pin this program onto 4 chapters or chapter headings. And if you're taking notes, these are the title of our chapters. Number 1, that we're choosing the right ladder for the job. And what does that mean at home? Also, that we're inspecting ladders, and that we are setting ladders up correctly, and that we're climbing ladders as safely as possible. So here we go. Chapter number 1, choosing the right ladder for the job. When you're choosing the right ladder for the job, let's make sure it's a ladder, because we know it gets tempting to stand on things that are closer and more convenient and happen to be in the same room. Now, here are some, hopefully some extreme cases, but at home, it might be a chair, it might be a bar stool, it could be the kitchen table or the piano bench. I've seen some people stand on 5-gallon buckets just because they happen to be in the garage and closer than a ladder. So I think we should start right there, and we want to make sure that we draw attention, especially for home use, that choose a ladder. Choose a piece of equipment designed to be stood on. And when you're choosing the correct ladder, the right ladder will be number one, the right material, because the material can make a big difference. At home, a metal ladder is often the right material, unless we're around an electrical application. So make sure you're choosing a material that's appropriate for the work that you're doing. Even tall limbs that are might be near power lines, even for home use. Sometimes we think of fiberglass as more of a professional kind of material, but fiberglass is still appropriate for home use if you are working around electrical applications. So number one, choose the right material. Number two, choose the correct weight rating. Weight ratings start at 200 pounds, fairly light duty. Make sure that you account for what's on the ladder with you. If you're wearing boots, if you have 2 or 3 layers of clothing on, you're working at around the winter time doing Christmas lights or cleaning out your gutters. Just a few weeks ago in February, I was trimming my walnut tree because I was told do that early in the season. So we have 3, 4 layers of clothing, every tool, every piece of equipment, but also every one. If you have people that are in your home that have other weights than you do, we need to think of ladders as a communal tool. That includes maybe a neighbor that borrows a ladder. So if you choose those higher weight ratings, then almost everybody can be covered there. So choose the correct weight rating and also choose the right style. Ladders come in different types or different styles, and step ladders have their purpose. Extension ladders have a completely separate purpose than a step ladder, and multi-purpose ladders have multiple purposes. Again, if you have a tricky setup on stairs, or this is where Little Giant got its start. If you know anything about Little Giant, it's the staircases and unlevel ground that we've been tackling for 53 years. Now, while we go through this training, you'll notice that we're going to check in with OSHA, because I think that it's important to understand what's required, what's not. And again, when we're at home, there are some different requirements, but let's just check in and see what really is a best practice or safety that's required when we're on the job. OSHA says that when you're choosing the right kind of ladder, only use a ladder the way that it was designed. And that means that we don't makeshift solutions. It's not okay to call a step ladder on a Monday and then say, well, I'm in my own backyard, I can makeshift this into an extension ladder. This is not only an OSHA violation, but it really is an unsafe practice. Those back legs may come open. The top cap was not designed to lean against anything. So it really isn't a good practice, regardless of whether you're a professional or you're at home. So that's why there's been innovation in the ladder industry. There are ladders that have been designed to close and lean. So there are a lot of great ladders being out there, including the King Combo by Little Giant, but closed leaning ladders. Make sure that you're only using a ladder the way that it was designed. I think that that's an important point, even for DIY or home use. Also, choose the right size. And when we say choose the right size, when you're using a 6-foot step ladder, you're not standing at 6 and you're not standing at 5. Obviously, your feet are at 4. I think most of us know this. And if your feet are at 4, that means an average size person has a working height of about 10. So if your applications are any higher than that, then you need to take the time to put that 6-foot ladder away and go get the right size. Remember, do not stand on the top rung. Do not stand on the top cap. Now, that's why multi-purpose ladders have been very popular over the years, because we can unlock the side rail and actually create the length or height as we need it. But even when a ladder is 8 or 9 feet tall, just a reminder here that we do not stand on the top rung. In fact, we'd suggest being 2 rungs down, even for home use. So make sure that you're standing at least 2 rungs down, regardless of the piece of equipment that you're on. So step ladders are pretty clear, right? Where we shouldn't stand. I think most people know step ladders pretty clearly. Let's talk about extension ladders. When you're choosing the right size of an extension ladder, A 20-foot extension ladder is not 20 feet long. It's actually 20 feet of material. So we have a 10-foot base section that stays on the ground or the floor, plus we have a 10-foot fly section that gets raised and lowered by the rope. So 10 plus 10 is 20 feet. What you might not know as a homeowner is that those sections are to be used in tandem. That's why that ladder manufacturer sold them to you together, because they need to stay together. A 20-foot ladder at its very longest is 17 feet long because there's 3 feet of that material that overlaps. And longer ladders, when you get into 32 and 40-foot extension ladders, you're going to have even more overlap. So make sure that you account for the overlap of the material. And then OSHA requires, and even at home, highly recommended best practice, 3 feet of the side rails. So picture an extension ladder up and over your roof line, up and over your gutters, so that you have enough to hold on to as you move from the ladder onto your roof line and then back onto the ladder. And this is a big one. This often gets people in a little bit of trouble. So make sure that you have at least 3 feet of those side rails above the upper landing. We need balance and control as we're transitioning on and off of the ladder. So if you think about it, you do that math, the overlap over the upper landing and the overlap of the material itself. In order for us to get onto a 20-foot roof line, we would need a 28-foot extension ladder in order to do that. So make sure that you account for that kind of material and the overlap. So that's how we measure extension ladders. In fact, all ladder manufacturers measure their extension ladders the same way. And if a ladder's not tall enough, just some reminders that we don't stand where we shouldn't. Don't stand on, regardless of the piece of equipment, we don't stand on guardrails or the top of products. Also, even if a ladder's double-sided, we do not sit or straddle double-sided ladders as well. Some risks that we do often at home. Also, we don't stack ladders on top of other items. It should go without saying that if a ladder's too short, not a good idea to stack ladders on top of boxes or barrels, or if you wait for it, tables in the gym, right? Just go get the right size ladder. Also, we're not to tie ladders together. If you think one ladder's good, maybe 2 ladders would be better, and with enough rope or wire, zip ties, maybe you can lash some. No, we don't do this either. Don't stack ladders, tie sections together, and certainly we're not going to stack the family on top of each other either. Okay, so and just choose the right ladder. So the correct ladder would be the right material, the correct weight rating, the right style, and the right size. Okay, chapter number 2, inspection. Let's talk about inspection. The trick question is, how much does a broken ladder hold? And we don't know. Even Mr. Dave Francis doesn't know. How much does a broken ladder hold? Is it going to give out next week? Is it good until Easter? Maybe the 4th of July? When is that ladder finally going to give out? So we don't want to guess at a ladder's condition. We need to assess the ladder's condition. And the only way that you're going to know if something's broken or missing or compromised is to take a minute, look the ladder over. Number one, this is required per OSHA. So if you're using ladders professionally, we know that ladders are to be inspected before each initial use, or the beginning of the time that you've pulled that ladder into service. But let's talk about home use. If you have a neighbor like mine that has borrowed a ladder from you, and they're bringing it back a week later or a few hours later, you don't know what that ladder went through while it was away from you. And if your neighbor dropped it, bumped into it, and it received some kind of damage, it's a good idea, even at home, to take a minute before you look a ladder over and make sure you're checking for anything that's broken, missing, bent, compromised. So make sure even at home that you're looking ladders over on a regular basis. There's a great app. Let's introduce you to the NIOSH safety app. NIOSH is the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and essentially the science arm behind OSHA. They have developed a free resource for us, and we are cheerleaders of this app, and a lot of businesses rely on this particular app. So maybe even as a homeowner, this might be a good resource for you. Just go to where you download your apps. Free download, we highly recommend it. But let's just go through a quick inspection, shall we? Since we know it's required when we're on the job, but a good idea at home, let's just go through a quick inspection. Let's talk about what we're looking for. Number one, the feet. The feet of a ladder, I want you to think of these like the tires that you have on your car. You wouldn't drive your car with bald tires. You wouldn't drive a truck with missing tires. But we see people use ladders with compromised feet. So that is the foundation that you're on. The traction that you have with your driveway, your yard, those are the feet. So if the feet are not present, if they are not in like new condition, then we would recommend that you replace those. And there are some ladder companies that have designed their ladder feet to be replaceable. So make sure that you're rotating those as if you would the tires on your car. The side rails or the stiles of the ladder, those also should be inspected. Now, aluminum, that's one thing. Make sure that there are no deformities, permanent, the bending, et cetera, that happens through some kind of impact. Make sure that the side rails are free from that kind of damage. Fiberglass, a little bit of a different animal here because you've got a lot going on. Different strands of material getting pulled into a tighter profile, all baked into a resin or essentially a plastic. So if that side rail isn't sound, and especially for fiberglass, if it is broken or split or cracked, again, we don't know how much a broken ladder is going to hold. And the rule of thumb here is that if you can feel the fibers on your fingers, it's a good indication that it's undergone enough stress that it's become weakened. So again, take those ladders out of service and just replace it. And then fiberglass is also susceptible to what's called fiber bloom. You've all seen aging fiberglass, especially ladders that are stored outdoors on top of vans or trucks, or if you don't have room in the shed and it's just been on the side of the house out in the weather. This is where the harsh winter weather or maybe the hot summer sun has deteriorated the resin to the point that now the fibers are coming to the surface. And yes, it takes years to get to this point. This doesn't happen overnight, but when your fiberglass looks like this, like Paxton has shown us, those fibers are now open to the elements. So when it rains or snows on it next, those fibers may draw moisture or wick moisture into that side rail, and waterlogged fiber is not consistently non-conductive. So it is a safety concern. When your ladders develop that fiber bloom, just take those out of service as well. The rungs and the treads, any standing surface, they have traction or texture to them. So make sure that that texture is available to hold onto your boots. Hold your boots securely in place. Make sure that if they're gummed up with mud, anything debris or anything slippery, that they're clean, but that they're also free from damage, because eventually a crease becomes a crack. And at some point that cosmetic damage is going to cross the line and it becomes structural damage. So you need to make an educated decision there. Okay, is it safe? Is it not? Is it cosmetic damage, or is it unsafe? So again, the rung should be inspected. Any fasteners, they're going to look different depending on the product that you're using. They can be nuts and bolts, they can be rivets, even welded together. So make sure that the fasteners are tight and doing the job that the manufacturer has put them on there to accomplish, right? Holding components together. Make sure each fastener is tight. And then related components. Now, related components can include rock locks, it can include spreader bars, or even top caps on step ladders. Of course, extension ladders usually have rope and pulley systems. So make sure that each component is operating the way that it should. Rock locks, hinges, all components on your ladders should operate the way that the manufacturer has designed them. Now, some need to be cleaned and lubricated, some can be maintained, and some can be replaced. But again, the only way that you're going to know if something needs your attention is to find it, and the only way that you're going to find it is to look the ladder over before you use it. Again, an inspection is very important. And then the labels. Labels are more important than people think they are. What you and I refer to as just a sticker also has a lot of information on it. Safety information, where the highest standing surface is, maybe some instructions on how you can use that product, certainly the weight rating. So make sure that those labels are legible for everybody. Your family might rely on that. If you have a neighbor, again, that borrows a ladder, make sure that that you keep up on those labels. And most manufacturers make those labels available. So just reach out to the manufacturer or to the distributor where you purchased your ladder. And labels, of course, are pretty easy to replace. And then as a best practice, we would recommend that when your ladder has finally served its life and you're ready to throw it away, destroy a ladder before you take it to the recycle yard. Don't just take an old worn out ladder and hand it to a neighbor or donate it to someone. If it's not safe enough for you and your family, that means it's not safe enough for somebody else. So destroy a ladder before you throw it away or take it down to the recycle yard. Okay, great idea. Make sure that you're looking a ladder over. And if we've done chapter number 1 and we've chosen the right ladder, and number 2, that we know it's in good condition, then essentially we've eliminated the ladder as the potential cause of any kind of mishap or an accident. So now the rest of our safety is on the decisions that we make. Number 1, the setup, and then we'll talk about climbing. But chapter number 3 in ladder safety is our setup, and we'll caution you about creativity. Of course, creativity is the enemy of safety. Remember that there's no amount of lumber or other ladders or telephone books that's going to make this a good idea. Again, a little bit more tempting to do at our own home because we don't have coworkers or a supervisor that's going to come in and say, that's not allowed. We might set up ladders like this at home. If you want to work in the staircase, just get the ladder that works in the staircase. OSHA tells us that the feet of the ladder need to be on ground that is stable and level unless we secure or stabilize that ladder from moving at all. And when we stake a ladder off, let's say we have some unlevel ground, make sure that you're staking the ladder off at the bottom. And there are some job-built solutions. There are accessories that are on the market that might be a good idea. Again, the ladder industry has come a long way, especially in the last 25 years. And there are certain industries that require this. So cable and telecom or even roofing companies. So if you are using ladders professionally, make sure that you're following any best practices or protocols that you've been trained with, but also a good idea at home that when we're on unlevel ground, we want to take precautions. In fact, if we had just 1 inch of unlevel ground, look at what it does to an extension ladder. If you're off just 1 inch doesn't sound like a lot, but on a 28-foot extension ladder, that 1 inch becomes amplified or multiplied and 19 inches off from plumb at the top. So the top of your ladder isn't even within the footprint of the bottom. And what do we usually do, especially at home? I think we get tempted, don't we, on unlevel ground to find a rock or a brick. OSHA actually prefers that we dig out the high side. And a good idea at home, prepare the ground, dig out the high side, make it firm and level. Or if you have the right ladder for the job, there are ladders that will adapt or adjust, leg levelers or even accessories that are built in. So legs that can grow to compensate for that unlevel ground. You see the leveler or even the velocity with the ratchet levelers, the sumo stance, and even the adjustable safety cage is another innovation by Little Giant. So either prepare the ground to be firm and level or come prepared with the right piece of equipment that can adapt or adjust. This includes unlevel ground outside, but it also includes when you're working on a porch or unlevel ground. Certainly staircases, so making one side of the ladder longer, one side of the ladder shorter so that we can compensate for something as dynamic as stairs, or your porch, or that terraced landscaping that you might have on the side of the house. We also want to make sure that you're setting your ladders up at the correct angle or the correct inclination. So let's talk about that for a second. When we use a ladder around our home, we don't want to set a ladder up too steep. And we certainly don't want to set a ladder up too shallow. I think that this is where every YouTube fail, have you ever seen a ladder fail on a YouTube video and the feet will generally slide out? So we want to make sure that you have this at the correct angle. And OSHA has determined that that is a 4-to-1 ratio. For every 4 feet that the ladder's going up, the bottom of the ladder should be 1 foot away from the surface. Hold on, Paxton, let's just fix that. How's that? 4-to-1 ratio. So if my ladder was 16 feet in the air, the bottom of my ladder is 4 feet away from the surface that I've leaned it against. If we're 20 feet in the air, the bottom of the ladder is 5 feet away. Also turns into a 75-degree angle. And a really easy way to calibrate 75 degrees is called the firefighter's rule. And you might have already been taught this, but firefighters are taught in their training that if they put their toe at the bottom of a ladder, then at their shoulder height, they should be able to hold onto the side rail or cover the rung that's at their own shoulder height, because your arms are in relation to how tall you are, usually. And then what if they're not? There's your dad joke. There you go. Thank you. Also, make sure that during your setup that all 4 points are on a firm surface. When you're using an extension ladder, make sure that the surface that you're leaning the ladder against is stable and will support your weight. And then down at the bottom, make sure obviously that the feet are in contact with firm level ground. So 4 points in the extension ladder position, and then obviously 4 points here at the bottom, all 4 feet. If one foot is hovering there in midair because you're on the roots of that tree, don't think that you can lean off to one side and balance that ladder out. Take your time, prepare the ground, make sure that you are set up at the correct angle. And then there are some variables that are going to change, right? Depending on whether we're live in Minnesota, maybe you're in Florida, maybe you could be indoors, maybe you're outdoors. And there are some things that are going to affect our setup depending on the season or where you might be using your ladder. So number one, overhead obstructions. You need to be aware of overhead door jams. When we're indoors, we might need to be aware of something that could be in our way, and that might affect your setup. When you're outdoors, it could be overhead power lines. You need to be aware of where your overhead power lines are. 3 out of 4 electrical fatalities are because a ladder came in contact with overhead power. So make sure that you're aware of overhead obstructions, overhead power lines. This includes tree limbs, etc., indoors or outdoors. Also, the weather may change. You need to be aware of extreme weather, days where the wind is too strong, maybe there's too much rain, too much hail in the forecast, and that may affect when or how you set up a ladder. And then also traffic. And I know at home that might be a kind of a different thing, but if you're set up in the driveway and your significant other is out running errands, you want to be visible. So it may be a good idea for you to put out a cone or put something in front of your ladder, because visibility is safety, especially at home, because we're not always aware of who's set up on the driveway or who's set up in the on the side of the house. So make sure that people in your home are aware that you are on a ladder, elevated, and that that is an important part of your setup, is making sure that you are visible. You can see that that's why Little Giant has adopted that shade of green, high vis green, because again, visibility is safety. This is the spectrum of the human eye, your anatomy class today, that we actually perceive high vis green easier, faster, safer than other colors. So there's some science behind why Little Giant has chosen that shade of our fiberglass. And then let's talk about transportation, because part of our setup includes getting the ladder from the garage or the shed to where we're actually using the ladder. So the way we carry ladders is an important part of our setup. And this actually accounts for the #1 cause of injury because of ladders. We often think of a ladder accident as somebody falling from a ladder, but statistically what happens more often is the way people carry ladders or how they load ladders. And it often leads to strain and sprain injuries. It could be a shoulder or lower back. You can see that this gentleman is a professional, but let's say the ladder was on the side of our shed and we needed to pick it up and move it through the gate or around the side of the house. So we want you to think, now that you know that this is the #1 cause of lost time injury, insurance claim, statistically what will send people more often to the doctor or urgent care. But now that you know that's #1, carry ladders with a little bit more intention. Carry ladders in the balance point. If you can carry ladders in a smaller package, we would recommend that you bring ladders to their smallest or stored position, whether it's an articulating ladder, a step ladder should be closed. Extension ladders should be brought down to their stored or smaller position. We could carry ladders on our shoulder this way. We could carry ladders tipped so that they're horizontal to the ground this way with two hands below your waist. Or if you do have wheels, you could engage those wheels, and that would make your transportation that much easier. So that's a great addition. But just some reminders, make sure that you carry ladders a little bit safer and with a little bit more intention that you have in the past. Carry lighter equipment when lighter equipment's available. Also be aware of your surroundings. If you need to open the gate, if you need to let somebody know that you're coming through. And don't be so macho that you don't ask for help. If you have a larger or heavier piece of equipment, a larger extension ladder, call somebody over. You know, sometimes ladders can be a two-person carry, and there's no shame in that. But now that you know that's number one cause of ladder injury, just carry ladders with a little bit more intention than you have before. Okay, so that's all part of our setup, our transportation. Let's talk about climbing. Climbing ladders safely, our fourth and final chapter in ladder safety. And if you only listen to one part of today's training, very, very important that when you're climbing, when you're positioning yourself, when you're working from any ladder, never overreach. This is the common thread that runs through most life-changing, life-ending injuries, usually begin by somebody getting outside the footprint. The bare minimum is to keep your belt buckle between the side rails. And if you want to be extra vigilant, the shoulders between the side rails. So think of your wingspan from your fingertips to your fingertips. That really is the extent of your work. And if you can't reach the work, simply come down, move the ladder, climb back up. And we know that it's one thing when we're here in a, in a safety training, we're thinking of the ALI and our responsibility to safety, our dedication to being better than we were before. But when it's Thursday afternoon and you're doing the Christmas lights or cleaning out the gutters or trying to get that one last limb trimmed on the tree so that you can get back to the game, or maybe there's a barbecue waiting or whatever it is, I think that especially at home, we get tempted because we have the privacy of our own backyard. So some of those temptations when we're at home that we might stretch the rule a little bit. So we can't stress that enough. Number one, never overreach on a ladder. Number two, 3 points of contact. 3 points of contact is required per OSHA as we're climbing both up and down. But what does this mean when we're at home? 3 points of contact really is balance and control. When we're climbing both up and down, it's really important for us to be in balance and control so that we can do the work safely. So we would recommend, as you climb ladders, that 1 hand and 2 feet, 2 hands and 1 foot, put tools in your tool belt. Nothing should be in your hands as you're climbing both up and down. But once you get to your final destination, and just for today's training, I'm just going to stop right here. But notice that I'm using the bottom of both feet in good footwear. And we know at home you might get tempted to climb ladders in flip-flops or footwear that's not really a good idea. Make sure you're using or wearing good, firm footwear, even when you're in the privacy of your own backyard. So the bottom of both boots, but what if you could hug the side rail? Again, depending on the piece of equipment that you're using, but that gives me more contact, more context, so that I have more balance and even more control. Then your left knee, maybe your right thigh. So you're touching the ladder in multiple locations so that you can pull the tools from your tool belt. Or if your ladder is equipped with a top cap, then you can actually do the work with 2 hands, hammering in a nail, trimming a tree. A lot of those jobs that we do at home require 2 hands. So make sure that you have balance and control so that you can apply your hands and your tools to actually get the work done. So again, 3 points of contact required when we're on the job, but a very good idea when we're using ladders at our own home. The difference also is that when we're climbing down a ladder, we often are either in a hurry, we lose some kind of awareness, and we might come down a ladder and step off too early. So just as you descend a ladder, make sure that you're maintaining 3 points of contact as you descend, and check, just have that environmental awareness, check how many rungs are underneath you, make contact with every single rung, and make sure that you make contact with every rung, because that is the second leading cause of ladder injury. 20% of reportable injury that happens on ladders is just because people will often miss that bottom rung. So there are some ladder manufacturers that are making ground cue or indicators to remind us that we are at the bottom. So if you have a piece of equipment that has that ground cue, again, that's just a safety feature that you'll find on some manufacturers. So make sure that you're making contact with every rung on the way down, important part of climbing. And then also don't move or shift ladders when you climb them. I think that this is pretty well said and safety 101, but ladders are not to be moved or shifted or extended while an employee or even a family member's on it. We don't walk ladders around. Now, honestly, it will keep your boots dry, if we can be tongue in cheek here, right? That when the sewer's back up and the spring runoff needs to go somewhere. So, but really, it makes for entertaining YouTube videos, but never appropriate. So don't walk ladders around. Also, don't take items that don't belong. There are some things that are heavy, some things that might just make you lose your balance, and they really shouldn't be on a ladder with you. So if we think of how many things are going wrong in this video, and we could probably count at least 4 or 5 things that are wrong in this video, and we don't show you this entire thing, but this also includes when you have one of those big totes full of Christmas decorations and you're trying to shove it into the attic. You've been there, done that? I have, right? So those things that are heavy, that might make you lose your balance, even at home, they really should be brought up another way. And then facing the ladder. This is required per OSHA on the job, but even at home, very good idea to face the ladder when you're climbing up and facing the ladder when you're climbing down. Sometimes we're tempted to, we think it's some mark of our bravery or mark of how balanced or how talented we are, but I see some people turn their back to ladders and walk down ladders the wrong way. So remember that when you're using A-frame ladders or extension ladders, it's required that you're facing the ladder when you're climbing, and a really good idea that you face ladders as you're doing the work. Do you think you probably could have leaned the ladder against the other building? So definitely not the fault of the product, just made a poor decision. And some of those decisions we are willing to do at home that we aren't always willing to do when we have a supervisor or coworkers that are watching. Okay, so ladder safety 101 in review, and then we'll ask Joe if there are questions or any other feedback, or Dave if you want to correct anything that I might have gotten wrong. But in review, ladder safety, number 1, choose the right ladder for the job. Make sure it's the right material, the correct weight rating, the right style, and the right size. Inspection, required when we're on the job, but even a best practice or a good idea when we're at home. Make sure the ladder's in good condition before you're using it, and that you set ladders up correctly on firm level ground. There you go, there's inspection. Make sure that you set ladders up correctly and make sure that they're on level ground at the appropriate angle, and that you carry ladders with intention. Now that you know that's number 1, make sure that you transport or carry ladders safely, and that you climb ladders. Climb ladders, 3 points of contact, face the ladder as you're climbing, never, ever, ever overreach when you're on a ladder. Okay. Are there questions in the chat? Anything? I know that we have a few minutes here. We'd love to open this up for any questions, comments about how we use ladders safely at home, DIY use.
Yep, as Kenyan mentioned, we'll open up the question feature. You can type your questions into there, and we'll get started with one. How should I determine if I should use an aluminum ladder or a fiberglass?
Good question. And again, sometimes that's a professional question. Sometimes professionals know which industry they're in, if they should be using a non-conductive ladder, which would be fiberglass or wood, or a ladder that might be a little bit lighter, aluminum, generally lighter than fiberglass. So sometimes we'll choose aluminum. So at home, generally aluminum would be a great material. So to make that decision, are you around an electrical hazard? Are you doing electrical work? Are you changing a light fixture? Are you installing a ceiling fan? Are you disconnecting electricity? We would recommend a fiberglass ladder in electrical applications, where if you're painting, if you are cleaning out your own gutters, aluminum is generally a really good material. Lightweight, strong, and aluminum would be fantastic. Again, just watch for those overhead power or any kind of overhead power lines when you're using aluminum products.
And then, am I able to make repairs on my ladder at home?
That's a really good question. Am I allowed to make repairs when I'm at home? Dave, how would you answer that question? You've had experience here.
This is one that I see a lot of pictures of, and that is people thinking that they can bolt a 2x4 into the bottom leg, or I've seen duct tape. We've seen I guess the rule of thumb, the best practice is, if your feet are worn, the rope on your ladder or the components of a hinge or a spreader bar are bent or damaged, those things you could replace or repair in the field or at home. If the rungs are bent or broken or cracked, or the side rails, those things that we would consider structural, then those things need to be replaced. So don't try to fix a bent or broken rung or side rail, but definitely feel free to change those feet or replace any component parts on your ladder.
Yeah, and just we'll also give you the guidance to make sure that you reach out to the manufacturer and only make repairs that they have given you permission to replace. So be cautious there. Reach out to the manufacturer if you have any questions. Great question, Joe. Anything else? Let's try to stump Dave. That's always a fun game.
So someone here is asking, what type of ladder is acceptable to straddle? I don't think any ladder is acceptable, but I'll let the experts handle that.
Yeah. Dave?
I've asked people in the industry what they think about straddling ladders, and some people have not even known what I'm talking about. So I don't know. I think we might have a picture of somebody straddling a ladder. Kenyan can demonstrate it for us, but on a bigger ladder, especially a double-sided ladder, you'll see workers climb up, throw their leg over, and sit on top of the ladder, which is probably more a thing of comfort, but this is not OSHA approved. We don't want you sitting on top of a ladder. It is accepted. Kenyan, you want to show them when it is acceptable to straddle a ladder?
Yeah, my understanding is that with a step ladder, anything over 36 inches, so even if it's an articulating or a multi-purpose ladder, if it's over 3 feet tall, don't straddle it, even if it's double-sided. If it's under 36 inches, then it lands under a different category as a step stool. Step stools are a different category. And if they're double-sided, and only if they're double-sided, if it was just a back brace or a support, then obviously we couldn't. But if both sides have rungs or treads on them, and the manufacturer has designed it for that purpose, make sure that you make note of that. Make sure that you follow manufacturer's guidelines to do that. But if a ladder is double-sided and it's under 36 inches tall and designed by the manufacturer for that purpose, then it can be straddled.
Best rule of thumb is a small step stool that's designed for interior work, but all those larger ladders, please don't sit up on top of them. Would love to put a saddle up there at the top to make your job more comfortable, but we're really more concerned about your safety than your comfort.
Good point. Good. Any other questions, Joe?
Yeah, we got a couple, then we can wrap it up. How do I set up a ladder on soft dirt or snow?
This one, we see a lot of accidents happening when you're setting your ladder up, maybe in the garden area or the planter area next to your house, which is generally soft dirt or bark. The rule of thumb is kind of distribute the weight. So if the feet are maybe going to sink down into the soil or down into mud or snow, a small piece of plywood that you can lay down before that's going to distribute that load across the bigger surface area to prevent 1 foot from maybe sinking in and throwing your ladder off balance. A leveler ladder like Kenyan showed you that has the capability of really leveling one side of your ladder quickly so that you're not getting that kind of tip in those softer areas is going to be helpful. But that trick, if you're in really soft dirt, is going to be distribute the load with a piece of plywood so that you prevent those feet or legs of your ladder from sinking down in and maybe causing your ladder to tip. It's going to be your best practice.
And I think if any setup in snow, Dave, what would you say there? Dig that out until you find the earth?
Yeah, go down to the ground. What happens as you climb a ladder, if you set it up in snow, you might think that you've got a firm base, but as you climb, it really increases the torque and pressure on that leg that you shift your weight to, and that's going to cause the foot to drop further down into that snow and cause one thing that we almost always forget to talk about is when you're working in snow, it's not, we want you to go to the ground, but we also want to know what's going on with the snow above you. So we see a high percentage of people getting knocked off their ladders as the snow shifts on the roof or the branches above you. So make sure you're aware of not only the snow below your ladder, but also the snow that's above you.
Yeah, those overhead obstructions. It's not always overhead power. It could be overhead snow. Oh yeah.
And then we'll wrap it up with, can you have 2 people on a ladder if they meet the weight requirement?
I know Kenyan and I don't meet the weight requirement between the 2 of us, but we do say single person as you're going onto a roof, but Kenyan, that ladder in particular is designed for 2 people at the same time. And that really comes in handy around the home when you're hanging pictures, you're doing those jobs where more than 2 hands are required. A double-sided ladder, that's going to be rated at 300 pounds per side. So that's going to allow you to have 2 people at the same time. And I don't know if we have any pictures of that in use.
Yeah, I believe so. Maybe the Velocity double-sided. I don't know that we do, but yes, if it's built by the manufacturer for that purpose. So just go back to the instructions and make sure that there are rungs on both sides and not just rungs on one side and the supports or the back brace only stand on the surfaces that were designed to be stood upon. So yeah, if there are rungs on both sides, then read the instructions and make sure it's designed for that. But like Dave said, for a ladder like this, where it's designed at a 300-pound capacity, it's actually 300 pounds on each side at the same time. And there are manufacturers, Little Giant included, that do make double-sided ladders.
Joe, thank you for the American Ladder Institute's support of Ladder Safety Month. Thank you for allowing us to be part of this, such a great cause. So many people injured, sometimes life-altering injuries to family members. I think all of us can kind of think of somebody who we know who has had an accident on a ladder. So knowing the dangers and some of the kind of tricks or best practices to stay safe and not take those risks during the weekend when we're home trying to get jobs done quickly. We need a safety officer at home. I know my wife is my safety officer, but just don't do anything at home that you wouldn't do on the job during the week. So still keep those same safety practices. Kenyan, Paxton, thank you so much for doing such a great job at the studio.
Very good. Yeah, thanks, Paxton.
And if anybody has an organization, a club, a group that you would like Little Giant to provide ladder safety training from these beautiful studios, I know our calendar is open and we can provide that training for your organization as well. So you can reach out to us, either Dave or Kenyan at ladders.com, and we'd be glad to schedule a ladder safety training for your organization. So thank you. Thank you for your support of National Ladder Safety Month.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. And thank you to Kenyan and Dave for sharing their expertise with us. As a reminder, you can find the recording for each webinar in this series online at laddersafetymonth.com, along with additional safety resources. And thank you again to Little Giant for sponsoring today's webinar, and to all of you for joining us and being so dedicated of ladder safety throughout National Ladder Safety Month and all year. Have a great day and see you soon.
Be safe, everyone.